Hello everyone, welcome back to Buried Files. Tonight we bring you 7 deeply disturbing true Christmas horror stories that will shatter the illusion of safety we associate with the most wonderful time of the year. These are not fictional tales designed for entertainment, but genuine accounts from individuals who discovered that darkness does not take a holiday. And sometimes the most terrifying moments occur when we are supposed to feel most secure. Each story has been gathered from first-hand testimonials, corroborated through witness statements, and verified against documented incidents. We will explore encounters ranging from predatory criminals who exploit holiday trust, to unexplained phenomena that defy rational explanation, to disturbing discoveries that reveal how thin the line between celebration and nightmare truly is. The Christmas season, with its traditions of welcoming strangers and lowering our guard, creates unique opportunities for horror to enter our lives. If you appreciate authentic horror content that confronts the genuine darkness lurking beneath festive lights and forced cheer, subscribe to Buried Files and activate the notification bell so you never miss our investigations into real terror. After you hear these harrowing accounts, share your own disturbing holiday experiences in the comments below. Now prepare yourself as we unwrap 7 Christmas stories that were never meant to be told around the fireplace. When people talk about Christmas miracles, they never mention the kind that almost gets you killed. My name is Clara, and the year I turned 14, I learned that even something as innocent as Christmas caroling can be used as bait by someone who understands how much we all want to believe the season is still pure. I grew up in a quiet town in Connecticut where everyone knew everyone, where wreaths appeared on doors the day after Thanksgiving, and where my grandparents' street turned into a glowing tunnel of lights every December. I loved it. I loved the candles in the windows, the smell of wood smoke, the way sound seemed softer when the snow fell. I honestly believed Christmas was the one time of year when nothing truly bad could happen. My grandparents had a tradition they never missed. Every Christmas Eve, after dinner, they would turn the TV off, make hot chocolate, and sit in the living room waiting for the carolers. For as long as I could remember, a church group from across town would come around in a cluster of 10 or 15 people, bundled in scarves and hats, singing Silent Night, while the younger kids tried not to slip on the icy sidewalk. My grandmother would always say the same thing. If you ever need proof there is still good in the world, listen to people singing in the cold for no reason, but to make strangers feel less alone. That year, I believed her. By the next morning, I never would again. It started snowing around 6 that evening. The flakes were big and wet, sticking to the window panes and turning the street into something out of a postcard. My grandfather was pretending not to doze in his armchair. My grandmother kept going to the kitchen for just one more cookie, and I was curled up on the couch with a blanket and a book I was not really reading. Every few minutes, one of us would peek through the curtains to see if any figures were moving out on the sidewalk. I kept imagining a crowd of bundled shapes, the faint start of "Oh, come all ye faithful" drifting in from the cold. The house felt safe and warm, the kind of safe that makes you careless. The doorbell rang a little after 9. It sounded too sharp in the soft quiet of the house, and all 3 of us jumped. My grandmother laughed, smoothing her sweater, and said, "That will be them." She told me to check the front window to see which group it was this year. I remember running to the window with this childish excitement building in my chest, pressing my face into the cold glass and breathing a cloudy circle into it. I expected to see a crowd. There was only one person standing on our porch. It was a girl, maybe a few years older than me. She was wearing a long dark coat and a red knit hat pulled low, with her hair tucked up underneath. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, and she cradled a songbook in her gloved hands. She looked up as I peeked through the curtain and smiled, as if she knew exactly where my face was, behind the glass. There was nothing overtly scary about her, but something about a lone caroler on a night when there was always a group made my stomach tighten for a moment. My grandmother opened the door before I could say anything. A wave of cold air rolled into the living room. The girl's voice was soft but clear. "Good evening," she said. "Sorry to bother you this late. I am with the church group on Oak Street, but the others were not feeling well, so I decided to continue the route alone. Would you like to hear a carol?" My grandmother loved people too easily. She smiled at the girl the same way she smiled at the checkout clerks, the mailman, the kids selling candy bars for school. "Of course, dear," she said. Come, let us hear you." The girl tilted her head and began to sing Silent Night. I remember being struck by how beautiful her voice was. Pure, steady, the kind of tone you associate with choirs in big stone churches. It echoed strangely in the front hall, mixing with the creak of the old house settling in the cold. My grandfather had come to stand behind my grandmother, and even he looked affected by it, his eyes half closed. When she finished the verse, my grandmother clapped her hands together. "That was lovely," she said. "You must be frozen. Do you want to come in for a minute and warm up? We have hot chocolate." The girl hesitated for exactly the amount of time you would expect from someone who did not want to impose, but secretly hoped you would insist. Her smile widened just a bit. "Oh, that is very kind," she said. "Just for a moment, if that is all right." I remember a flicker of unease then. I cannot explain why. It might have been the way her eyes moved past my grandmother's shoulder before she stepped inside, scanning the room, lingering for a second on the hallway that led to the back of the house. It might have been nothing more than the fact that I had never seen a caroler come inside before. I opened my mouth to say something, but my grandfather had already stepped aside to let her in. The moment the door closed, the house felt different. The warmth that had seemed comforting just seconds before felt thick, almost suffocating. The girl unwrapped her scarf, slipped off one glove, and held the songbook close to her chest. She looked around with an expression that I might have called admiration if it had not been so careful. "You have a beautiful home," she said. "Have you lived here long?" My grandmother beamed. "Oh, for 30 years at least. We raised our children here. Now they send us their children for the holidays, so we do not get lonely." The girl's eyes slid to me, and for a moment I felt as if I were being measured. "This is our granddaughter," my grandfather said. "She is staying with us this Christmas. Her mother is working nights at the hospital." The girl nodded. "That is good. No one should be alone at Christmas." There was something off in the way she said it, a strange emphasis, like it was less a sentiment and more an observation. My grandmother put a hand on my shoulder and told me to pour the guest a mug of hot chocolate. I went to the kitchen, pretending not to hurry. As soon as I was out of sight, I stopped and listened. The girl lowered her voice, but I could still hear snatches of it. "Always wanted to see inside this house. Here it is one of the oldest on the street." My grandfather chuckled. "Old, yes. The basement is older than the rest, but it is solid." "Basement?" the girl said. "Is that the door down there?" I leaned just far enough to see into the hall. Her gaze was fixed on the narrow door at the end of the corridor, the one that led to the basement steps. My grandparents kept it locked. Always. I never questioned that before. My grandmother called my name, and I forced myself to fill the mug, to bring it back, to act normal. The girl accepted it with a murmur of thanks. But she did not drink. She just cradled it, letting the steam rise against her face, her eyes still wandering around, as if she were mapping the place. "How much longer until your group finishes?" my grandfather asked. "Not long," she said. "They might catch up any minute." There were no other voices outside. The street was completely silent. After a few minutes of small talk, the girl asked if she could use the bathroom. My grandmother pointed her down the hall to the left, just before the basement door. The girl smiled, set the untouched mug on a side table, and walked away. The sound of her footsteps faded. The house grew quiet again. Too quiet. I realized I had not heard the bathroom door close. I told myself I was being silly, that I had just missed it, that there was nothing strange about a teenage girl needing to pee after walking around in the cold. But the longer it stayed silent, the more the hairs on the back of my neck lifted. My grandmother went to collect the empty mugs in the kitchen. My grandfather sat back down in his chair with a sigh. I stood in the middle of the living room, listening so hard my ears rang. Finally, I could not stand it. I walked to the hall, trying to act casual in case she stepped out and saw me. The bathroom door was open. The light was off. The basement door was slightly ajar. We never left that door open. I knew that as surely as I knew my own name. I stopped a few feet away, my heart pounding in my throat. Cold air, somehow colder than the draft from the front door, seemed to seep up from the gap. I could not hear anything from below, but I felt something, a presence, the sensation of being watched from a dark place. "Grandma?" I called, my voice sharper than I intended. "Where did she go?" My grandmother appeared behind me, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She followed my gaze, and for the first time that night, I saw something like fear on her face. "Your grandfather locked that," she said. "I saw him do it after he checked the furnace this afternoon." She reached out and pushed the door. It swung inward with a soft creak. The basement stairs disappeared into blackness. The dusty smell of concrete and old wood drifted up, but underneath it was another scent, faint and sour, like sweat soaked into fabric. My grandmother called out, "Dear, the bathroom is on the left, not downstairs." There was no answer. A sound came instead from outside. Tires crunching on snow, a car door slamming, voices. I jumped and turned toward the front of the house. A moment later, there was a knock at the door, followed by a burst of chattering and laughter. My grandfather opened the door. The real carolers stood there, bundled in coats and scarves, 10 or 12 of them, kids and adults, sheet music in gloved hands. "Sorry we are late," one of the women said. "The van got stuck on Maple for a bit. We did not miss you, did we?" I walked back into the living room in a daze. My grandmother shut the basement door without saying anything and slid the deadbolt at the top. Her face had gone very pale. The girl was nowhere to be seen. Her coat, her hat, her songbook, her untouched hot chocolate on the table. The only proof she had been there. The carolers sang. I barely heard them. My eyes kept drifting to the hallway, to the closed basement door. When they finished, my grandmother pressed extra bills into the donation envelope with shaking hands and wished them a Merry Christmas in a voice that did not sound like her own. After they left, my grandfather checked every window and door in the house. The bathroom window was unlocked and open an inch, snow starting to blow in onto the sill. The paint around the latch was chipped in a way it had not been that afternoon. He closed it and locked it again, then went down to the basement with a flashlight, despite my grandmother's protests. He found footprints in the thin dust near the far wall. Our basement had no outside entrance, just concrete shelves, old furniture, and the furnace. But in the corner, beside the old workbench, some of the cinder blocks looked newer, the mortar fresher. He knocked on them and heard a hollow echo. The police came an hour later. They walked the house, checked the basement, took our statements. My grandmother kept repeating. She did not drink the hot chocolate. She came in and she did not drink it. One of the officers exchanged a glance with his partner when my grandfather showed them the blocked section of the wall. A week after Christmas, they broke it open. Behind the newer cinder blocks was a narrow crawl space, no bigger than a closet. It smelled like earth and mold. There were old blankets piled there, a couple of empty water bottles, food wrappers. Someone had been sleeping in that space. Someone had been coming and going in our house without our knowledge, through a basement window we did not even know could be pried, open from the outside. There were scratch marks on the window frame, tiny metal shavings on the sill. They never found the girl. They checked every church in town. No youth choir claimed her. No one recognized the description. The officers told my grandparents she was likely part of a group that used the holidays to scout older houses, that she might have planned to come back with others, that we had interrupted something. Maybe worse than a burglary. They asked my grandmother again why she had let a stranger inside. She cried for days after that. For a long time, I blamed myself for not speaking up sooner, for not trusting that uneasy feeling in my gut when I saw that she was alone, when I saw the way her eyes moved over the house like a blueprint. I still hear her voice sometimes when Christmas music plays, that clear tone wrapping itself around the word holy and twisting it into something else. We changed the locks. My grandparents sealed the basement window and installed a motion sensor light over the backyard. They stopped inviting carolers in after that. They would listen from the doorway, always with the chain on. My grandmother never gave that speech about proof of goodness again. Every Christmas Eve, when the snow starts to fall and the streetlights turn everything gold, I think about how close we came to sharing that house with someone we did not invite. Someone who had been waiting below our feet, listening to our footsteps overhead, memorizing our voices. People talk about Christmas miracles, like they are always about angels and bright lights. Mine was different. Mine was the sound of a van getting unstuck on Maple Street, and the sight of a group of real carolers arriving just in time to prove that the girl standing in our living room did not belong to any choir at all. I inherited my great-aunt Ophelia's estate in December of 2015, and I wish to God I had let it rot instead. The lawyers called me out of the blue on a Tuesday afternoon, saying a distant relative had passed and named me sole heir to her property in rural Vermont. I barely remembered Ophelia. She was my grandmother's older sister, someone whispered about at family gatherings but never really discussed. The few times I asked about her, my grandmother would get this tight look around her mouth and change the subject. All I knew was that Ophelia never married, never had children, and died alone in the same house where she was born. She was 93 years old. The house was even older. I drove up from Boston 3 days before Christmas, thinking I would spend a week sorting through her belongings, maybe find some antiques worth selling, then list the property with a realtor and be done with it. The house sat at the end of a long gravel drive that wound through bare trees and patches of dirty snow. It was a Victorian, 3 stories tall, painted a faded yellow that might have been cheerful once, but now just looked sickly in the gray winter light. The porch sagged. The shutters hung crooked, but the bones of the place were solid, and when I stepped inside, it smelled like old wood and lavender sachets instead of mold or rot. The lawyer had left the keys in the mailbox, along with a handwritten note that said, "Everything inside belongs to you now. Do with it what you will." I walked through rooms filled with furniture draped in white sheets, shelves packed with books whose spines had faded to nothing, and boxes stacked in corners like someone had been meaning to organize them for decades and never got around to it. It felt like a museum. It felt like a mausoleum. But it did not feel dangerous, not at first. I set up in one of the second-floor bedrooms, the one that looked like it had been a guest room at some point. There was a bed with a brass frame, a dresser with a cracked mirror, and a window that looked out over the backyard where snow was starting to fall again. I made myself coffee in the ancient kitchen and started going through boxes, sorting things into piles. Keep, donate, trash. Most of it was trash. Old magazines from the 70s, receipts for things purchased half a century ago. Letters written in cramped handwriting I could not decipher. Then I found the photograph. It was in a wooden box tucked into the back of a closet on the first floor, wrapped in yellowed tissue paper. The frame was ornate, carved dark wood with floral details, heavy in my hands. The photograph itself was large, maybe 10 by 12 inches, and so clear it could have been taken yesterday, if not for the clothing. It showed a Victorian family gathered around a Christmas tree in what I recognized as the parlor of this very house. There were 7 people. A stern-looking man with a thick mustache, a woman in a high-collared dress, 4 children in their Sunday best, and in the background, half hidden behind the tree, a 7th figure. That figure was blurred, not like the camera had moved, but like the person themselves was vibrating, out of sync with the rest of the image. I could not make out a face, just a vague shape, human-sized, standing in the shadows near the doorway. Everyone else in the photograph was perfectly sharp. I turned the frame over. On the back, written in faded ink, it said, "Christmas 1891, the Hartwell family." I should have put it back. I should have left it in the box and forgotten about it. Instead, I brought it upstairs and set it on the dresser in my room, propped against the mirror. I told myself it was interesting, a piece of history, maybe worth something. But the truth is, I could not stop looking at it. That blurred figure pulled at my attention like a loose thread I wanted to tug. That night, I lay in bed staring at the photograph in the dim light from the hallway. The figure seemed darker than it had in the afternoon, more defined somehow, though that made no sense. I convinced myself it was a trick of the shadows and forced myself to sleep. The next morning, I woke up, made coffee, and passed the dresser on my way to the bathroom. I glanced at the photograph. The blurred figure had moved. I froze mid-step, my heart lurching. It was not in the background anymore. It was closer to the family, standing just behind the smallest child, a little girl with ringlets and a lace collar. The blur was still there, but the shape had shifted. I grabbed the frame and brought it close to my face, searching for some explanation. A crack in the glass, a smudge, a trick of the light. There was nothing. The glass was clean. The image was exactly as it had been, except for that one figure. I told myself I was remembering it wrong. People do that all the time, misremember details, especially in old photographs where everything starts to look the same after a while. I set the frame back down, took a picture of it with my phone, and made a note of the timestamp. If it moved again, I would have proof I was not losing my mind. The next day, December 23rd, I compared the photo on my phone to the one on the dresser. The figure had moved again. Now it stood directly behind the father, the tall man with the mustache. I could see the outline of shoulders, the suggestion of a head tilted at an unnatural angle. My hand started shaking. I took another picture. I did not know what else to do. On Christmas Eve, the figure was standing behind the mother. I could see details now that had not been there before. The shape of fingers, long and thin, resting on the woman's shoulder. The photograph was changing. Something inside it was moving closer to the family, one person at a time, and I could not explain it, and I could not stop looking. That night, I could not sleep. The house creaked and settled around me, the way old houses do, but every sound felt deliberate. I kept getting up to check the photograph, to see if it had changed again, and every time I looked, the figure seemed darker, sharper, more present. By 3 a.m, I was sitting on the bed with the frame in my lap, staring at it under the light of my phone's flashlight, trying to find some rational explanation. That was when I heard the music. It was faint at first, coming from somewhere downstairs. A piano, or maybe a music box, playing a tune I recognized but could not name. Something old, something that belonged to another century. I set the photograph down and crept to the bedroom door, my pulse hammering in my ears. The music was clearer in the hallway. It was coming from the parlor. I should have stayed upstairs. I should have locked the door and waited for daylight. But part of me needed to know. I went down the stairs one at a time, gripping the railing, my breath shallow. The music grew louder. It was not a recording. It had the mechanical quality of something being played on an old instrument. Notes slightly out of tune, tempo uneven. The parlor door was open. The room was dark except for a faint glow coming from the corner where the Christmas tree would have stood in the photograph. I stepped inside. The music stopped. I stood there in the silence, my heart slamming against my ribs, and reached for the light switch. My fingers found it. The overhead light flickered on. The room was empty. No piano, no music box. Just furniture covered in sheets and dust thick enough to show that no one had been in here for months. But in the corner, near the window, there were marks in the dust on the floor. Footprints, small, like a child's, leading from the doorway to the center of the room, then stopping. I ran back upstairs, grabbed the photograph, and turned it over. The blurred figure was gone. I searched the image, my eyes darting over every face, every shadow, every corner of that parlor from 1891. The family stood frozen in their poses, smiling stiffly at the camera. But the figure that had been moving closer to them, day by day, was no longer there. I heard a sound behind me, a faint creak, like weight settling on old floorboards. I turned. There was nothing there. Just the empty hallway, the dim light from the bedroom, the silence pressing in. But I could feel it. I could feel something watching me. Something that had been inside that photograph for more than a century and was not inside it anymore. I smelled it then. Decay. Not the musty smell of an old house, but something organic and rotten, mixed with the sharp green scent of pine needles. Christmas and death wound together. I did not pack. I dropped the photograph, left it lying face down on the floor, and walked out of that house with nothing but my phone and my keys. I got in my car and drove back to Boston without stopping, without looking back, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. I called the lawyer the next morning and told him to sell the estate as is, that I did not want anything from it, that he could keep whatever profit came from the sale. He tried to talk me out of it, said the house and contents were worth a significant amount, but I did not care. I told him I would sign whatever he needed me to sign, but I was never going back. He called me 2 weeks later. the house had sold to a couple from New York looking for a vacation property. They loved it. They thought it had character. He said they were planning to spend their first Christmas there next year. I did not tell him what I knew. I did not warn them. What would I even say? That a photograph had moved? That I heard music and smelled death? They would think I was insane. I searched for information about Ophelia after that. I wanted to know why she had stayed in that house for 93 years, why she never left, why my grandmother refused to talk about her. I found an old newspaper article from 1952, an interview with local residents about the history of the town. Ophelia was mentioned. The reporter asked her if she ever felt lonely, living in that big house all by herself. Her answer was 3 words: I am not alone. I found another article from 1984 about a fire that nearly destroyed the house. Ophelia refused to evacuate. Firefighters had to drag her out. When they asked her why she would not leave, she told them, "It will not let me." She died on Christmas Eve. Alone, according to the death certificate. But I do not believe that anymore. I still have the pictures I took on my phone, the ones that show the figure moving through the photograph day by day. I have looked at them exactly once since I left that house. I will never look at them again, but I will never delete them either. They are proof that I am not crazy. Proof that something was in that photograph. Something that Ophelia spent her entire life trapped with. And proof that I let it out. The new owners sent the lawyer a thank you card last Christmas. He forwarded it to me, thinking I might want to see that the house had gone to a good home. The card had a photo on the front. The couple, smiling, standing in front of the fireplace in the parlor. Behind them, on the mantel, I could see the edge of a wooden frame. They had found the photograph. They had put it back up. I wanted to call them. I wanted to warn them. But what would I say that would not sound like the ramblings of someone who had lost their mind? And maybe I am wrong. Maybe it was all stress and isolation and an overactive imagination. Maybe that figure is still gone, dissolved into whatever shadows it came from. But I do not think so. I think it waited in that house for more than a century, moving through that photograph 1 inch at a time, year after year, until someone finally let it out. I think Ophelia knew. I think that is why she never left, why she spent 93 Christmases in that house, keeping watch, keeping it contained. And I think it has found new people to stand behind now, new faces to move toward, one day at a time, while they hang stockings and trim the tree and never notice the figure getting closer in the photograph on their mantel. I hope I'm wrong. But every Christmas Eve, at exactly 3 in the morning, my phone buzzes with a notification. No message, no caller. Just a push alert that wakes me from whatever restless sleep I have managed to find. And when I unlock the screen, just for a second before it goes dark again, I see an image I did not take. A photograph I did not save. It is me, standing in my apartment, and behind me, blurred and out of focus, there is something else. My boyfriend Miles and I thought a remote Christmas getaway sounded romantic, the kind of thing you see in movies where couples reconnect away from the noise of the world. We had been together for 2 years, and things had gotten stale in that way relationships do when you stop trying. We worked too much. We scrolled through our phones instead of talking. We needed something to shake us out of the routine, and a week in the mountains before Christmas seemed like the perfect solution. Miles found the listing online. A restored lodge deep in the Appalachian wilderness. No neighbors for miles. Nothing but forest and silence. The photos showed exposed beams, a stone fireplace, wide windows looking out over snow-covered pines. It looked like a postcard. The price was almost too good to be true. The owner, an older man with a gray beard and tired eyes, met us at a gas station off the main highway to hand over the keys. He did not say much, just gave us directions and a warning that cell service disappeared about 5 miles up the mountain road. Then, right before he got back in his truck, he turned and said something I thought was a joke at the time. Stay inside after dark on the 21st, winter solstice. The locals take it seriously up here. Miles laughed and said we would keep that in mind. I smiled and nodded, but something about the way the man said it, flat and matter-of-fact, made my stomach tighten. He did not smile back. He just drove away, leaving us standing in the parking lot with a keyring and a hand-drawn map. The first few days were perfect. We hiked through the woods, made fires in the evenings, cooked simple meals, and talked more than we had in months. The lodge was beautiful, all wood and warmth, and the silence was so complete it felt like the rest of the world had disappeared. On the third day, we went on a longer hike, following a trail that wound up through dense forest. That was when we found the symbols. They were carved into the trees, deep cuts that had scarred over with age. Circles, spirals, shapes that looked almost like letters but were not any alphabet I recognized. There were dozens of them, scattered along the trail, some fresh enough that sap still bled from the cuts. Miles thought they were fascinating. He took pictures, zoomed in on the details, talked about how it was probably some kind of folk art. I wanted to turn back. Something about those symbols felt wrong, like a warning we were ignoring. We kept hiking. We found more symbols the further we went, and then we found the clearing. It was a perfect circle, maybe 50 feet across, ringed by stones that had been placed deliberately, evenly spaced. In the center was a post driven into the ground, charred black, with bits of rope still tied around it. The ground was packed dirt, no snow, no grass, nothing growing. It looked like a place where things had been burned. Miles wanted to explore. I wanted to leave. We compromised by staying only a few minutes, long enough for him to take more pictures, and then we hiked back to the lodge. That night, I could not shake the image of that clearing. The way it felt empty and full at the same time, like something invisible was standing there, watching us. December 21st arrived faster than I expected. Winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. Miles had forgotten the owner's warning entirely, but I had not. I kept thinking about it as the afternoon faded into evening, as the light outside turned gray and then black. By 6, it was fully dark. By 7, I was standing at the window, looking out into the forest, feeling like something was about to happen. That was when we heard the chanting. It started faint, so faint I thought I was imagining it, a low rhythmic sound carried on the wind. Miles heard it too. He got up from the couch and joined me at the window, his face pressed close to the glass. The sound grew louder. Voices, dozens of them, moving through the trees. Then we saw the lights, torches, a long line of them, winding through the forest like a glowing snake. The flames reflected off the snow, turning the woods orange and red. We watched as the procession moved closer, and I realized they were heading toward the clearing we had found. Miles grabbed his phone to record, but the screen would not turn on. Dead, completely drained, even though it had been at 70% an hour ago. Mine was the same. No power, no signal. No way to call anyone or document what we were seeing. the figures reached the clearing. We could see them now, at least their shapes. Dark silhouettes in robes with hoods that hid their faces. They formed a circle around the stones, their torches held high, and the chanting grew louder. Words I did not recognize in a rhythm that made my teeth ache. One of them stepped into the center and placed something on the post, something with antlers, a deer skull crowned with bone. Miles whispered that we should go closer, that we could see better from the ridge. I told him absolutely not, that we needed to lock the doors and stay inside. He argued. He said it was probably just some local tradition, some harmless solstice celebration, and we were being paranoid. I told him the owner warned us. I told him those symbols in the woods were not for decoration. We were still arguing when the chanting stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. It was the kind of silence that meant something had hurt us. The figures in the clearing stood frozen, their torches flickering. And then, as one, they turned toward the lodge. I grabbed Miles by the arm and pulled him away from the window. I do not know if they saw us, but I was not going to wait to find out. We moved through the lodge, turning off every light, pulling every curtain, locking every door and window. The chanting started again, but this time it was closer, much closer. They were coming toward the house. I could hear footsteps now. The crunch of boots on snow, the murmur of voices speaking in that strange rhythm. Miles was breathing hard, his face pale, all his curiosity gone. We crouched in the kitchen, away from the windows, and listened as the sounds surrounded the lodge. They were everywhere, circling us. Then I heard my name, not shouted, whispered. Dozens of voices, all saying my name in unison, drawn out and wrong like they were tasting it. Miles heard it too. He looked at me, his eyes wide and mouthed, "How do they know?" I did not have an answer. We had not told anyone in town our names. We had barely spoken to anyone except the owner. But they knew. They were calling me over and over, a chant within a chant. The footsteps stopped at the doors, at the windows. I could hear something scraping against the wood, a soft, dragging sound, deliberate and slow. Then something hit the door. Not a knock, but a thud, like someone had leaned their full weight against it. The hinges creaked. Miles started to cry. I held his hand and tried not to make a sound. The scraping continued for hours. The chanting never stopped. At some point, I realized they were placing things against the house, objects I could hear but not see, dragging them across the porch, stacking them against the walls. The smell of smoke began to seep through the cracks. Not wood smoke, but something organic, something that made my eyes water. I do not remember when I fell asleep. Exhaustion took over, or maybe my mind just shut down to protect itself. When I opened my eyes again, it was dawn. The gray light of morning filtered through gaps in the curtains. The house was silent. Miles was already awake, sitting with his back against the kitchen cabinets, staring at nothing. Neither of us spoke. We waited another hour, listening before we finally worked up the courage to look outside. The clearing was empty. The torches were gone. But the lodge was surrounded. They had built structures against every door and window, woven frames made from branches and bone, tied together with dried grass and sinew. Symbols were scratched into the wood siding, the same symbols we had seen in the forest, covering every surface. And hanging from the eaves, swaying slightly in the breeze, were bundles of holly and bone, twisted into shapes that looked almost like dolls. Our truck tires had been slashed, all four of them, cut so deeply the rims had sunk into the gravel. We did not talk about what to do. We just started walking. 8 miles down the mountain road, stumbling through snow, jumping at every sound. The sun was high by the time we reached the gas station. The owner was there, sitting behind the counter, and when he saw us, he did not look surprised. "You stayed inside, did not you?" he said. I nodded. Miles could not speak. "Good," the owner said. "That is why you are still here." He drove us back to town without another word. We got a tow truck for the vehicle, paid for new tires, and left that same day. Never asked the owner what would have happened if we had gone outside. I never asked what the symbols meant or who those people were. I did not want to know. Miles and I broke up 3 months later. We never talked about that night, not once. But it sat between us like a wall. Some things are too heavy to carry together. I still think about the way they knew my name. I still hear it sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, a whisper just at the edge of hearing. I tell myself it is my imagination. I tell myself we were lucky. But every year on the winter solstice, I make sure every door is locked and every light is on, and I do not look out the windows after dark. I took a seasonal job as an elf at the mall in December 2012, desperate for money to cover spring semester tuition. I was 19, a sophomore at the community college, and naive enough to think a job where I wore a green velvet costume and handed out candy canes would be harmless. The mall was one of those upscale outdoor shopping centers where everything cost too much, and families came to take pictures with Santa like it was a sacred tradition. They paid $12 an hour, which was good money back then, and the manager promised it would be easy work. She was right about the easy part. What she did not mention was the Santa. His name was Jonathan, and he was beloved. Families requested him by name. The mall had used him for 15 consecutive years, and management treated him like royalty. He had his own dressing room, his own reserved parking spot, and a contract that apparently gave him approval over which elves he worked with. He was in his mid-50s, tall and broad-shouldered, with real white hair and a real white beard. He did not need much padding. When he put on the red suit, he looked exactly like the Santa from every Christmas movie, right down to the twinkle in his blue eyes. Parents loved him. Kids loved him. The other mall employees spoke about him with reverence, like he was doing something noble instead of sitting in a chair for 8 hours asking children what they wanted for Christmas. I hated him from the first shift. It started small. A hand on my lower back that lingered too long when he guided me into position for photos. Comments about how the elf costume fit me, how I looked just darling, how I was his prettiest helper yet. He stood too close when he talked to me, his breath warm on my neck, his voice dropping to a whisper that parents waiting in line could not hear. I told myself I was overreacting. He was a grandfather, a mall fixture, a man everyone trusted. I was just a broke college kid who needed the job. The other elves were 2 girls, both in their early 20s, and they barely spoke to me. When I tried to make conversation during our breaks, they would mumble something polite and walk away. I thought maybe they did not like me, that I had done something wrong. It took me a week to realize they were afraid, not of me, of him. One afternoon, the mall was slow. Families had thinned out after lunch, and we had a gap in the schedule. Jonathan told the other 2 elves they could take their breaks early. They left fast, almost running toward the food court. And suddenly, I was alone with him in the Santa workshop set. He smiled at me, that warm, grandfatherly smile, and said we should use the time to organize the prop area in the back. The prop area was a storage room behind the fake North Pole backdrop, filled with boxes of ornaments, extra candy canes, and rolls of wrapping paper. It was small and windowless, lit by a single overhead bulb. I did not want to go in there with him, but I could not think of a reason to say no that would not sound ridiculous. So I followed him. He closed the door behind us. The click of the latch made my stomach drop. I turned to look at him, and his expression had changed. The twinkle was gone. He was not smiling anymore. He just stared at me with his calm, appraising look, like he was deciding something. "You are a hard worker," he said. "I appreciate that." I mumbled a thank you and started moving boxes, trying to look busy, trying to fill the silence. "I have been doing this a long time," he continued. 15 years. Every year I pick one special elf, someone who really understands the magic of Christmas. My hands were shaking. I set down the box I was holding and turned toward the door. "I need to check on the line," I said. He stepped between me and the exit. "There is no line," he said. "I sent them away, remember?" He was close now, close enough that I could smell the peppermint on his breath and the stale sweat under his costume. He reached out and touched my hair, tucking a strand behind my ear. "You are special," he said. "I knew it the first day. You have that look, innocent, trusting, just like Emily, and Rachel before her, and the girl before that. I do not even remember her name." I felt the room tilt. He was telling me something, confessing, and he did not care that I could hear it because he did not think it mattered. He did not think I would do anything about it. "I have been doing this for 15 years, he said again, his voice soft and proud. "No one has ever said a word. Do you know why?" I shook my head, my throat too tight to speak. "Because I am Santa," he said, smiling now. "I bring in $50,000 in photo revenue every season. I am the reason families come to this mall instead of the one across town. Management knows that. They protect me. So even if you tried to say something, even if you ran out there right now and screamed, no one would believe you. I am a grandfather. I volunteer at the children's hospital. I have awards." He leaned closer, his hand sliding to my shoulder. "So, why do we not just make this easy?" he said. "You are my special elf this year. That is an honor. Other girls have understood that. I do not know what I would have done if my body had not reacted on its own." The fear hit me so hard and so fast that my stomach twisted, and before I could stop it, I vomited. Not politely, not a little bit. I bent over and threw up everything I had eaten that day, right onto his black boots. He jumped back, cursing, his face twisted in disgust. The spell broke. He was not calm anymore. He was angry, furious, yelling about how disgusting I was, how I had ruined his costume. He unlocked the door and shoved it open, shouting for someone to bring him towels. I ran. I did not grab my coat. I did not clock out. I ran through the mall, still in my elf costume, and I did not stop until I was in my car with the doors locked. I tried to report him. I went to mall management the next day, told them everything he had said, everything he had implied. The manager listened with a tight smile and then told me Jonathan had already filed a complaint about me. He said I had made inappropriate advances toward him and that he had to reject me, which was why I got sick. Stress, he called it, embarrassment. They fired me. They said my behavior was unprofessional and that I was clearly not a good fit for a family-friendly environment. Jonathan stayed. He finished out the season. He came back the next year and the year after that. I started looking for the other girls. Emily, Rachel, the one whose name he could not remember. I found them through social media, through old employee directories, through sheer stubborn determination. It took me 6 months, but I found 8 of them. 8 girls over 10 years, all with the same story. All told they were lying, all dismissed because Jonathan was Santa, and Santa does not do things like that. We reported him together. 8 statements, all consistent, all detailed. The local news picked it up. The mall could not ignore it anymore, not with that much attention. They let him go. Quietly, no charges, no arrest. Just a termination and a settlement offer if we signed non-disclosure agreements. Most of the girls signed. They wanted it to be over. I did not. I refused the money, and I told anyone who would listen what had happened. The mall threatened to sue me for defamation. They said I was damaging their reputation. I told them to go ahead. They never did. Jonathan disappeared after that. I do not know where he went. I do not know if he found another mall, another Santa gig, another set of elves to choose from. I hope he did not. I hope someone else recognized the look in his eyes and stopped him before he could start again. But I do not believe that. Men like Jonathan do not stop. They just move. Every December, I see mall Santas, and I wonder. I see the elves standing beside them, young girls in green velvet and striped tights, smiling for the cameras. I wonder if they feel that hand on their back that lingers too long. I wonder if they hear comments whispered just low enough that no one else can hear. I wonder if they are told they are special. And I wonder how many of them will report it, and how many will be told that no one will believe them because the man in the red suit is a grandfather, a volunteer, an institution. Because he is Santa, and Santa does not do things like that. I do not celebrate Christmas anymore. I have not since 2012. People ask me why, and I tell them I am just not in the spirit. They nod and say they understand that the holidays can be hard. They think I am talking about loneliness or family drama or something normal. I let them think that. It is easier than explaining that I cannot walk past a mall Santa without my hands shaking, that I cannot hear jingle bells without feeling sick, that I spent my 19th Christmas learning that the people we trust to protect children are often the same people who hurt them, and that no one wants to believe it because it ruins the magic. Jonathan took that from me. Not just the holiday, but the belief that someone would listen, that the truth mattered more than tradition, that being right was enough. I got none of those things. What I got was a lesson about power, about who gets believed and who gets erased, about how a red suit and a white beard can be better armor than any lie. I hope the other girls are okay. I hope they found a way to move past it that I have not. I hope Jonathan is alone somewhere, forgotten, powerless. But every year when December comes and the mall decorations go up and I see those photos of smiling children on Santa's lap, I think about the girl standing just off camera in the green velvet dress, and I wonder if she is okay. I wonder if anyone has asked her. I wonder if anyone would believe her if she said she was not. Our office Christmas party in 2017 had a secret Santa exchange, one of those mandatory fun activities that everyone pretends to enjoy, but secretly resents. I was 26, working at a mid-sized marketing firm in Philadelphia, and I had been there just over a year. Long enough to know most people's names, but not long enough to really know anyone. The party was at a rented event space downtown, open bar, catered food, the whole corporate celebration package. We were supposed to bring our secret Santa gifts wrapped and place them under the tree by 8. The exchange would happen at 9, right before the speeches and awards. I had drawn Eleanor's name. She worked in accounts, a quiet woman in her early 30s who kept to herself. I had maybe spoken to her 3 times in the entire year, short conversations about deadlines or meeting rooms, nothing personal. I did not know what she liked, so I bought her a candle from one of those expensive stores, something that smelled like vanilla and came in a glass jar with a ribbon. Safe. Impersonal. Exactly what you give to someone you do not know. I placed my gift under the tree when I arrived, grabbed a drink, and tried to blend into the background while my co-workers got progressively louder and drunker. At 9, our boss gathered everyone around for the exchange. We had done a number system. Everyone drew a number from a hat. And when your number was called, you picked a gift from under the tree. I was number 14. I waited through the first 13 people, watching them unwrap wine bottles and gift cards and those desk toys that are supposed to relieve stress. When my number was called, I walked to the tree and grabbed a medium-sized box wrapped in red paper with a silver bow. It was heavier than I expected. I brought it back to my spot, and everyone watched as I tore off the wrapping. Inside was a scrapbook. The cover was plain black leather, no title, no decoration. I opened it, expecting maybe some kind of office joke, a collection of memes or printouts from company emails. What I found instead made my hands go numb. The first page had a photo of me. Not a photo someone had taken at work or pulled from social media. A candid shot taken from a distance of me sitting in a coffee shop. I was looking down at my phone, unaware of the camera. I did not recognize the coffee shop at first, and then I did. It was the place 2 blocks from my apartment, the one I went to every Saturday morning. I turned the page. Another photo. Me leaving my building, wearing my gym clothes, headphones in. Another page. Me at the grocery store, reaching for something on a shelf. Another. Me on a date sitting across from someone at a restaurant, laughing. My heart started pounding. I flipped through the book faster. There were dozens of photos. Me walking my neighbor's dog. Me getting my mail. Me sitting on a bench in the park. Me through my apartment window, visible from the street, washing dishes, in my kitchen. Every photo had a caption written beneath it in neat handwriting. Dates, times, notes about what I was wearing, where I was going, who I was with. 7:42 a.m., coffee shop, black sweater, looked tired. 3:15 p.m., grocery store, bought wine, must be expecting someone. 9:30 p.m., kitchen, hair down, beautiful. Someone had been following me for months, taking pictures, writing notes, documenting my life. I looked up from the scrapbook, my vision blurring. The room had gone quiet. People were staring. Someone asked if I was okay. I could not answer. I held up the book, my hands shaking, and someone took it from me. I heard gasps, murmurs, the sound of pages turning. "What the hell is this?" someone said. Our HR director took the book, her face going pale as she flipped through it. She looked at me, then at the tree, then at the room full of people. "Who made this?" she said, her voice sharp. "This is not funny. Whoever did this needs to speak up right now." No one moved. No one said anything. The HR director checked the gift tag still attached to the wrapping paper. There was no name, just my number written in marker. She went to the sign-up sheet, the one where we had all written down who we drew for Secret Santa. My name was next to number 14. The person assigned to buy my gift was Eleanor. Every head in the room turned toward her. Eleanor was standing near the back, her face white, her eyes wide. She shook her head. "That was not me," she said. "I gave you a candle. I bought you a vanilla candle. I do not know what that is." "You were assigned to her," the HR director said. "I know," Eleanor said, her voice rising. "But I did not make that, I swear. I brought a candle. I put it under the tree this morning." Someone suggested checking the tree for another gift. We searched. There was no candle, no other gift with my number, just the scrapbook. Eleanor excused herself to the bathroom. She was gone for a long time, long enough that someone went to check on her. When they came back, they said Eleanor was sitting on the floor, crying, refusing to come out. I called the police. They came. They took the scrapbook. They interviewed everyone at the party. No one admitted to making it. No one had seen anyone place it under the tree. The event space had cameras, but they only covered the entrance, not the room where the tree was. The footage showed all of us arriving, placing gifts, mingling. Nothing unusual. They asked Eleanor to come down to the station. She agreed. She let them search her car. In the trunk, they found a camera with a telephoto lens. On the memory card were more photos, hundreds of them. Me at the coffee shop, me at the gym, me in my apartment, visible through the gaps in my blinds. Photos I had not seen in the scrapbook. Photos that were even more invasive, closer, more intimate. Eleanor broke down. She admitted she had been following me. Not since I started at the company, but since before. Since I interviewed. She said she saw me in the lobby that day, waiting to meet with HR, and she could not stop thinking about me. She said she just wanted to be close to me, to understand me, to be part of my life. She said she had never meant to scare me. The police asked if she had ever been inside my apartment. She hesitated. Then she nodded. Twice, she said. Just twice. She had taken my spare key from my gym bag one day at work, made a copy, and returned it before I noticed. She said she only went in when I was not home. She said she never took anything. She just wanted to see where I lived, to lie on my bed, to feel close to me. I felt like I was going to be sick. They arrested her, stalking, breaking, and entering. The company fired her the next day. I got a restraining order. She moved out of state a month later as part of her plea agreement. I never saw her again, but the damage was done. I moved 3 times in the next year. Every apartment I found, I would stay for a few months and then start to feel like I was being watched again. A shadow at the window. Footsteps in the hallway that stopped outside my door. The sense that someone had been in my space while I was gone, even though nothing was missing, even though the locks had not been tampered with. I checked my credit report obsessively. I changed my phone number. I deleted all my social media. I installed cameras. I bought new locks. I did everything the police told me to do. And still, I could not shake the feeling that she was out there, watching. The worst part was not knowing how long it had been happening before I found out. Months, at least. Maybe longer. How many times had she been in my apartment while I slept? How many times had she stood outside my window, watching me move through my own life, unaware that I was performing for an audience of 1? I started checking every gift I received. Christmas, birthdays, anything. I would unwrap them slowly, carefully, looking for signs that they were not what they seemed. My friends thought I was paranoid. Maybe I was, but I could not help it. Eleanor sent me a letter from wherever she moved to. It arrived 2 Christmases after the incident. No return address, postmarked from somewhere in the Midwest. I almost threw it away without reading it. I wish I had. She wrote that she was sorry, that she had been getting help, that she understood now that what she did was wrong. But then, at the end, she wrote something that made my blood run cold. I still think about you every day. I still miss being close to you. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are happy. I hope you know that someone out there cares about you more than you will ever understand. I burned the letter. I reported it to the police, but there was nothing they could do. She had not threatened me. She had not violated the restraining order. She had just sent a letter. I have not celebrated Christmas since. I do not go to office parties. I do not do Secret Santa, When December rolls around and my co-workers start talking about holiday plans, I make excuses. I say I am busy. I say I have family obligations. I do not tell them the truth. The truth is that every time I see wrapped presents under a tree, I think about that scrapbook. I think about Eleanor sitting in her car outside my apartment, camera in hand, waiting for me to walk past a window. I think about her lying in my bed, in my space, breathing in the smell of my pillows. I think about how many months she watched me before I knew. I think about how close she got before anyone noticed. And I think about the fact that she is still out there, somewhere, thinking about me every day. Christmas is supposed to be about giving, about surprises, about the joy of receiving something from someone who cares about you. I learned that gifts can be weapons, that surprises can be violations, that someone caring about you without your consent is not love. It is terror wrapped in ribbon, wrapped in. On Christmas morning 2009, every radio in our house started playing the same thing, and to this day, no one has been able to explain it. I was 16 years old, living with my parents and two younger sisters in a suburb outside of Richmond, Virginia. We were a normal family. We went to church sometimes. We argued about chores. We had traditions. Christmas morning was one of them. We always woke up early, made cinnamon rolls, and opened presents in the living room while our father took pictures and our mother pretended not to cry over sentimental gifts. That year, we started around 8 in the morning. The tree was lit, the room smelled like sugar and pine, and wrapping paper was already piling up on the floor. My younger sister had just opened a jewelry box and was holding it up for our mother to see. My father was adjusting the camera settings. I was tearing the paper off a box that I hoped contained the boots I had been asking for since October. It was one of those perfect moments, the kind you see in commercials, warm and safe and completely ordinary. Then every radio in the house turned on at once. The kitchen radio, the alarm clocks in the bedrooms upstairs, the old boombox in the basement, my father's workshop radio in the garage. All of them simultaneously, broadcasting the same thing, not music, not static, a voice. It was a man's voice, deep and calm, with an odd accent I could not place. Southern, maybe, but not quite. Old-fashioned in the way he pronounced certain words, formal and careful. And he was talking about us. "Merry Christmas to the Harrison family," the voice said. "I hope you are enjoying your morning. I see the youngest has received the jewelry box. The pearls inside belonged to her great-grandmother, did they not?" My father dropped the camera. My mother stood up so fast she knocked over her coffee. We all looked at each other, frozen, listening. "And the middle child," the voice continued, "is hoping for boots. Black leather, size 7. They are in the box she's holding. I think she will be pleased." I looked down at the box in my lap. I had not opened it yet. I tore off the rest of the paper with shaking hands. Inside were the boots. Black leather, size 7. "The father is worried the camera batteries will die before he finishes taking pictures," the voice said. "They will not. He charged them last night, though he does not remember doing it." My father ran to the kitchen. We heard him yank the plug out of the wall. The radio kept playing. "That will not help," the voice said, almost gently. "I am not coming from the outlet." My mother grabbed the cordless phone and started dialing 911. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to try twice. She held the phone to her ear and waited. Nothing. No dial tone, no ringing. Just silence. The phone lines are fine," the voice said. "But I would prefer you not call anyone just yet. I only have a little time, and I have been waiting so long to speak with you." My youngest sister started to cry. My mother pulled her close, wrapping her arms around her like she could shield her from the voice. My father came back into the room, his face pale, holding the kitchen radio. It was unplugged, the cord dangling, but the voice was still coming from the speaker. "How is this happening?" my father said, his voice cracking. "I have been here a very long time," the voice answered, as if it had heard him. "Watching, listening. I know this house better than you do. I know the creak in the floorboard outside the master bedroom. I know the loose tile in the upstairs bathroom. I know the way the light comes through the kitchen window at dawn." My father set the radio down on the coffee table and backed away from it. We all stared at it, this ordinary object that had become something impossible. "I know about the dog," the voice continued, and my mother made a small choking sound. "The golden retriever you had when you first moved in. Bailey. She died 3 years ago this past November. Cancer. You buried her in the backyard under the oak tree. The youngest still visits the spot sometimes." My sister was sobbing now. That part was true, all of it was true. "I miss her too," the voice said, and there was something in the tone, something almost sad. "She used to sleep in the hallway at night. I would watch her dream." "Who are you?" my father shouted at the radio. "What do you want?" There was a pause, a crackle of static, and then the voice came back, quieter this time. "I do not know anymore," it said. "I have been here so long that I have forgotten. I think I was someone once. I think I lived in this house, or maybe I died in it. The details are gone. But I remember Christmas. I remember the feeling of it, the warmth, the family. I do not have that anymore. So I borrow yours." "You have been watching us?" my mother said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every year," the voice said. "Every Christmas morning. I watch you open your gifts. I listen to you laugh. I remember what it was like to be part of something. Just for a little while, I am not alone." My skin was crawling. The idea that something had been in our house, watching us, for years, and we had never known, made me feel sick. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. I do not know why I asked. I do not know if I wanted an answer. The voice paused again, longer this time, as if it was thinking. "Closer than you think," it finally said. "Further than you would believe." The room felt colder. I pulled my knees to my chest, suddenly aware of every shadow, every corner, every space where something could be hiding. "I do not mean to frighten you," the voice said. "I know that I do. I know that this is wrong, but it is the only thing I have left. One morning a year, I let myself be part of your family. I let myself pretend that I belong. You need to leave," my father said, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. "You need to leave us alone." "I will," the voice said. "I always do. When the time comes, I will go back to wherever I go, and I will wait another year. But before I leave, I want to say thank you. Thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for the memories." "We did not let you," my mother said, anger breaking through the fear. "We did not invite you. We do not want you here." The voice did not respond to that. Instead, it said something that made my blood turn to ice. "Merry Christmas, Harrison family. I will see you next year." And then, at exactly 8:34 in the morning, every radio in the house went silent. Not off. Silent, the static returned, the hum of electricity. And then, one by one, They switched back to their normal stations. Christmas music, news, weather reports. We sat there for a long time, not moving, not speaking. Finally, my father got up and checked every radio in the house. They were all functioning normally. He called the phone company. The lines were fine. He called the police. They came, took a report, asked questions we could not answer. They checked for signs of a break-in. There were none. They suggested it might have been some kind of pirate radio signal, a prank, a hacker. But they could not explain how it had come through radios that were not plugged in. They could not explain how the voice knew details about our family that no one outside our house could have known. We never found an explanation. We had the house blessed by a priest. We replaced all the radios. We did everything we could think of to make ourselves feel safe again. But every Christmas morning since, we gather in the living room at 8, and we go quiet. We do not open presents. We do not turn on the radios. We just sit and wait, listening to the silence, waiting to hear if Hugh comes back. He never has. But I think about him. I think about what he said, about being alone, about borrowing our family for one morning a year because it was the only thing he had left. I think about the fact that someone has been in our house for years, maybe decades, watching us live our lives, and we never knew. I think about the way he knew Bailey's name, the way he knew where she was buried, the way he said he missed her too. I moved out when I turned 21. I live 3 states away now. I have my own apartment, my own life, my own traditions. But every Christmas morning, I unplug every radio in my home. I turn off my phone. I sit in the silence and I listen. I have never heard his voice again. But sometimes, when the house is very quiet, I feel like I am not alone. Like something is watching me, not with malice, but with longing. Like something is borrowing my morning, my warmth, that's my life, because it has nothing else. I do not know if that makes it better or worse. I do not know if Hugh is still in my parents' house, waiting for another Christmas, or if he has moved on to somewhere else. I do not know if he is a ghost or something stranger, something that exists in the spaces between radio waves and memory. All I know is that every year, my parents call me on December 25th, and the first thing they say is, "He did not come back." And every year, I do not know if I am relieved or sad, because part of me wonders what it would be like to be so alone that the only connection you have to the world is one morning a year, listening to a family that does not know you exist. Part of me wonders if that is not haunting. It is just loneliness. I bought a vintage snow globe at an estate sale 3 days before Christmas 2020, and I have spent every day since then wondering if I actually made it back out. The sale was in an old neighborhood in Baltimore, one of those streets where the row houses lean slightly toward each other like they are sharing secrets. The house belonged to a woman named Rosalie, who had died alone on Christmas Eve the year before. Her relatives were selling everything, furniture and dishes, and decades of accumulated belongings, all laid out on tables in rooms that still smelled faintly of lavender and dust. I collect vintage Christmas items, ornaments, postcards, anything with that particular quality of old holidays, when decorations were made of glass and paper instead of plastic. I was looking through a box of tree toppers when I saw the snow globe sitting on a side table, half hidden behind a stack of books. It was beautiful. The base was carved wood, dark and heavy with details that had been worn smooth by years of handling. Inside the glass dome was a Victorian parlor scene, a family gathered around a Christmas tree. The figures were incredibly detailed, painted with care, their faces tiny but distinct. A father, a mother, 4 children in old-fashioned clothing. The tree was decorated with miniature ornaments, no bigger than pinheads. Snow was suspended in the liquid, real flakes. Not the plastic glitter you see in modern globes. I asked the woman running the sale how much she wanted for it. She looked at it for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "That belonged to Rosalie," she said. It was the only thing she kept on display year-round. She never packed it away with the other decorations. "It is beautiful," I said. She was not, the woman said. "Beautiful, I mean, or happy. I am her niece, and I only saw her smile once in my entire life, at my wedding. And even then, it looked like it hurt her." I did not know what to say to that, so I just waited. $10, the woman finally said. "Take it. I do not want it in my house." I paid and wrapped the globe carefully in newspaper. I brought it home and set it on the mantel in my living room, next to the garland and the candles. It looked perfect there, like it had always belonged. That night, I shook it. I do not know why. It is what you do with snow globes. You shake them and watch the snow fall. But the moment I tilted it, I heard something. A sound, faint and high-pitched. That might have been the liquid sloshing inside, or might have been something else. Something that sounded like screaming. I set the globe down fast, my heart pounding. I told myself it was water pressure, air trapped in the glass, something logical. But when I looked at the scene inside, the figures seemed different. The mother, who had been facing the tree, now seemed to be turned slightly toward the glass. Her mouth, a tiny painted dot, looked open. I did not shake it again that night. The next morning, I picked it up to examine it in better light. The figure had moved. I was sure of it. She was facing the glass now, fully turned away from the tree, and one of the children, the smallest one, was also turned. Both of them seemed to be looking out, their tiny faces pressed close to the inside of the dome. I took a picture with my phone. I do not know why. Maybe I thought I was going crazy and wanted proof. Maybe I just needed to document it. I set the globe back on the mantel and tried to ignore it. But I could not. Every time I walked past, I felt drawn to it. I would stop and stare, trying to see if the figures had moved again, trying to convince myself that I was imagining it. And every day, I would shake it. Just once, just to see. By the third day, all the figures were facing outward. All of them were pressed against the glass, their painted faces distorted by the curve of the dome, their mouths open in silent screams. I stopped sleeping. I could not. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those tiny figures, trapped in their frozen moment, trying to get out. I became obsessed with the globe. I would sit in front of it for hours, shaking it over and over, counting the times. I do not know why I counted. It felt important. It felt like there was a number I was supposed to reach. 100? I had to shake it 100 times. I do not remember deciding that. It just became true, the way facts are true. I shook it in the morning. I shook it at night. I shook it during meals, during showers, carrying it from room to room because I could not stand to be away from it. On Christmas Eve, I reached 100. I shook the globe one last time, and the glass cracked. Not shattered, just a single thin line running from the base to the top of the dome. Liquid began to seep out, slowly at first, then faster, pooling on the mantel and dripping onto the floor. I tried to catch it, to stop it, but my hands would not work right. Everything felt slow and distant, like I was watching myself from far away. The room tilted, the lights dimmed, and then everything went black. I woke up on Christmas morning. I was lying on the couch in my living room. Sunlight was coming through the windows. The snow globe was on the mantel, intact. No crack, no water. For a moment, I thought I had dreamed the whole thing. A stress hallucination. Too much time alone during the pandemic. I sat up, my head pounding, and looked around. Everything was wrong. Not obviously wrong, just slightly off. The furniture was the same, but smaller, like I was seeing it from a strange angle. The colors were too bright, too saturated. The air felt thick, viscous, like I was moving through liquid instead of space. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, I could see my street, my neighbor's house, the tree in the front yard. But I could not hear anything. No cars, no birds, no sound at all. I turned back to the living room and saw myself. I was sitting on the couch, holding the snow globe, shaking it slowly. My face was slack, my eyes unfocused. I looked like I was sleeping with my eyes open. I tried to call out, to scream, but no sound came. I ran to the couch, tried to grab my own shoulder, but my hand passed through. I was not there. Or I was there, but not in the right way. I looked at the snow globe in my hands, the version of me that was still solid, still real. And inside the dome, I saw the Victorian family. But there was a new figure now, standing at the edge of the scene, out of place in modern clothing. It was me. I was inside the snow globe. I blinked, and I was back in my body. Solid, real, sitting on the couch with the globe in my lap. My hands were shaking. I looked at the scene inside. The new figure was still there. A tiny version of myself, painted in miniature, standing among the Victorians. My mouth was open. My hands were pressed against the glass. I threw the globe across the room. It hit the wall but did not break. It rolled across the floor and stopped at my feet, as if it was asking to be picked up again. I did not pick it up. I grabbed a trash bag, shoved the globe inside, and took it out to the alley behind my building. I threw it in the dumpster and went back inside. I locked the door. I turned on every light. I tried to convince myself it was over. 3 days later, the woman from the estate sale called me. I do not know how she got my number. I had paid cash. "Do you still have the snow globe?" she asked. "No," I said. "I threw it away." There was a long pause. "That is a shame," she said. "I have another buyer, someone who wants it very badly. She says there is a way out if you are willing to let someone else take your place." I hung up. I did not ask who the other buyer was. I did not ask how she knew. I burned the trash bag before the garbage truck could take it. I watched the flames consume the globe, watched the glass crack and melt, watched the tiny figures inside blacken and curl. But sometimes, late at night, I catch my reflection wrong. In a window, in a mirror, on the black screen of my phone. And it looks like I am seeing myself through curved glass, distorted and distant. And I wonder if I really made it out. I wonder if the version of me that burned the globe was the real one. Or if I am still inside, trapped in a scene that never changes, shaking the glass from the inside, while another version of myself moves through the world, wearing my face. I wonder if Rosalie felt this way for 93 years, wondering which side of the glass she was really on. The woman from the estate sale said Rosalie never smiled. That she looked like smiling hurt her. I understand that now, because I do not smile anymore either. Every time I try, it feels like my face is made of painted porcelain, like if I move too quickly, I will crack. I moved apartments twice since then. I do not collect vintage Christmas items anymore. I do not celebrate the holiday at all. and I never, ever shake snow globes. But every Christmas Eve, I stand in front of a mirror and I look at my reflection, searching for proof that I am real, that I am on the right side of the glass. And every year, I am a little less sure. Because the thing about being trapped is that you do not always know when it happens. You do not feel the moment you cross from one side to the other. You just wake up one day and realize that the world feels wrong, that you feel wrong, that you have been performing your own life instead of living it. Maybe I made it out. Maybe I am still inside. Maybe there is no difference anymore. All I know is that somewhere in a dumpster or landfill or another estate sale, there is a snow globe with a tiny figure inside that looks exactly like me. And if someone buys it, if someone takes it home and shakes it 100 times, I wonder what will happen. I wonder if I will finally know which side of the glass I am really on, or if someone else will take my place and I will be free. But freedom, I have learned, is just another word for forgetting which prison you are in.